My name is Irene Woulette, and I'm 32 years old. 5 years ago, my sister told my parents I had dropped out of medical school. It was a lie, and that single lie destroyed my entire family life. They cut me off. They blocked my number. They missed my residency graduation. They didn't attend my wedding. For 5 years, I was nobody's daughter. Then last month, my sister was rushed to the emergency room, bleeding, unconscious, and dying. The trauma team paged the chief surgeon, the doors opened, and when my mother saw the name on the white coat walking toward her daughter's stretcher, she gripped my father's arm so tightly it left bruises. Before we go further, take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if this story truly connects with you. Leave your location and local time in the comments. I want to know where you are right now. Now let me take you back to fall 2019, to a kitchen table in Hartford, Connecticut, and the last time my father ever looked at me with pride. Growing up, there were 2 daughters in the Woulette household, but only one who truly mattered. My sister Monica was 3 years older. She seemed to arrive in the world already performing school plays, student council, the kind of girl who could talk to any adult at any dinner and make them laugh effortlessly. My parents, Jerry and Diane Woulette of Hartford, Connecticut, working middle class, steady and practical, loved her for it. My father ran a manufacturing plant. My mother did part-time bookkeeping. They valued 2 things above all: appearance and obedience. Monica gave them both without fail. I was the quiet one, the one buried in biology textbooks at Thanksgiving, while Monica held the table's attention. I wasn't rebellious. I wasn't difficult. I was simply overlooked. There's a difference between being forgotten and never being seen at all. Here's a small example. In 8th grade, I reached the state science fair, the only student from my school. That same weekend, Monica had a community theater performance. One guess where my parents went. When I came home with a second-place ribbon, my father glanced at it and said, "That's nice, Renee." He never asked what my project was about. He never did. I told myself it didn't hurt. I told myself I didn't need their attention. I poured everything into my grades, my AP classes, my applications. I decided that if I couldn't be the daughter they noticed, I would be the daughter they couldn't ignore. And for one brief, shining moment, I was. The day I was accepted into Oregon Health and Science University's medical program, 3,000 miles from Hartford, something changed. For the first time in my life, my father looked at me, truly looked at me, and said 5 words I had waited 18 years to hear. But I'll get to that. First, you need to understand what Monica did when she realized the spotlight was shifting. The acceptance letter arrived on a Tuesday in April. I remember it clearly because Monica was visiting that weekend. She was 22, working as a marketing coordinator at a mid-level firm in Stamford. A decent job, a decent life. Fine was always Monica's ceiling, though she would never admit it. My father opened the letter at the kitchen table. His eyebrows lifted. "Oregon Health and Science," he said slowly, as if testing the words. "That's a real medical school." Then he looked at me. "Maybe you'll make something of yourself after all, Renee?" It wasn't really a compliment. Not fully. But it was the closest I had ever received, and I held on to it like oxygen. That night my mother called my Aunt Ruth. She called her sister. She called 2 neighbors. Irene got into medical school. Can you believe it? Her voice carried something I had never heard before. Pride. Real, unfiltered pride, directed at me. At dinner, I noticed Monica across the table. She was smiling, but it didn't reach her eyes. Something else was there. Calculating, measuring, adjusting. I understand that now. At the time, I thought she was just tired from the drive. That week, Monica began calling me more often. 2, sometimes 3 times a week. "How's packing going? Who's your roommate? What's Portland like?" She asked about my schedule, my classmates, my professors. She remembered every name I mentioned. I thought my sister was finally seeing me. I thought maybe my acceptance into med school had opened something between us. Respect, connection, something like what normal sisters have. I was giving her ammunition. Every detail, every name, every vulnerability. I handed it over with gratitude. 3rd year of medical school was when everything broke open. My roommate and closest friend was Sarah Mitchell. She grew up in foster care, had no family to speak of, and she was the reason I survived 1st year. When I called home once during an especially brutal anatomy exam week, and my mother said, "I can't talk, Renee. Monica is having a rough day at work," It was Sarah who sat with me on our apartment floor and said, "Their loss. Now get up. We've got cadavers to memorize." Sarah was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer in August of my 3rd year. No family, no support system. Just me. I went to the dean's office the next morning, explained everything. He approved a formal leave of absence, 1 semester, caregiver status, paperwork filed, position held. I would return in January. Everything was documented, everything legitimate. I moved into the spare bedroom of Sarah's apartment, drove her to chemotherapy, and held her hand in the oncology ward at 3 o'clock a.m. when the pain became unbearable, and she couldn't breathe. I called Monica to tell her. I don't know why, maybe I still believed she was the sister she had been pretending to be. I told her about Sarah, about the leave, about my plan to return in the spring. Monica's voice turned soft. "Oh my God, Raina. I'm so sorry. Take all the time you need. I won't say anything to Mom and Dad. I know they'd just worry." 3 days later she called our parents. I don't know exactly what she said that night. I wouldn't learn the full extent of her lie until 5 years later, when everything unraveled in the one place none of us expected. But the damage was immediate. The call came at 11 p.m. Cast. I was sitting in a plastic chair beside Sarah's hospital bed. She'd had a severe reaction to her latest round of chemo, and they'd admitted her overnight. My phone lit up. "Dad, your sister told us everything," his voice said. Flat, icy. The dropping out, the boyfriend, all of it. "Dad, that's not..." "Don't." Monica showed us messages. She showed us proof. I pressed my hand against the wall to steady myself. "What messages? What proof?" "Dad, I'm in a hospital right now. I'm taking care of my friend." "Monica said you'd say exactly that," he replied after a pause. "She said you'd have a story ready." My mother came on the line, her voice shaking. "How could you lie to us for a whole year, Irene?" "Mom, please listen to me. I filed a leave of absence. I can show you the paperwork. I can give you the dean's number." "Enough," my father cut in. "Don't call this house again until you're ready to tell the truth. You've embarrassed this family enough." The line went dead. I sat on that hospital floor for 20 minutes. Sarah's IV machine beeped behind the curtain. My phone screen still showed the call duration, 4 minutes and 12 seconds. That's how long it took my parents to erase me. 20 minutes later, a text came from Monica. "I'm sorry, Raina. I had to tell them. I couldn't keep your secret anymore." She wasn't sorry. She had just carried out the most precise strike of her life, sealed with a broken heart emoji. I was 3,000 miles from Hartford. I had $46 in my checking account, and I had just become no one's daughter. I tried. I need you to understand that. I tried everything I could from 3,000 miles away, with no money, and a dying friend in the next room. Over the next 5 days, I called my parents 14 times. The first 3 went to voicemail. By the 4th, my father's number was blocked. My mother blocked me 2 days later. I sent 2 emails, one short, one long. The long one included my leave of absence paperwork as a PDF. I attached the dean's direct number. I included Sarah's oncologist's name. I gave them every piece of evidence a reasonable person would need. Neither email received a response. I wrote a handwritten letter, mailed it priority from Portland. 5 days later, it was returned unopened. I recognized my mother's handwriting on the envelope. I called Aunt Ruth, my father's younger sister, the only person in the family who had ever treated me as an equal. Ruth called my father that same evening. I know because she called me back 40 minutes later, her voice heavy. "He told me to stay out of it, sweetheart. He said you've made your bed." Ruth tried to tell him about the leave of absence. My father hung up on her. 5 days, 14 calls, 2 emails, 1 letter, 1 intermediary, all of it rejected, blocked, or returned. And that's what made it final. This wasn't new, it was the pattern of my entire life, compressed into its most brutal form. Every science fair they skipped, every recital they forgot. Every time Monica's version of events was accepted without question while mine was dismissed. This was only the final, loudest version of it. On the 6th day, I stopped calling. Not because I gave up, but because I realized they had already chosen. Monica had only given them permission to stop pretending. Sarah died on a Sunday morning in December, quietly, just the monitor flatlining, and the pale winter light through the hospice window. I was the only person in the room. No one from my family called. No one knew. The one person I had told, Monica, was too busy maintaining the lie she had planted to care that. The reason for my leave of absence had stopped breathing. I arranged a small funeral. 6 people attended. Sarah's former foster sister drove from Eugene. A few classmates, a nurse from the oncology ward who had grown fond of her. I stood at the front of a chapel that could hold 60 and read a eulogy to empty rows of pews. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't broken, but because I had been crying for 3 months straight, and there was nothing left. That night, I sat alone in Sarah's apartment. Our apartment. Her coffee mug was still on the counter, her jacket still by the door. I opened my laptop and stared at the re-enrollment application for spring semester. Then I found it, tucked inside Sarah's copy of Grey's Anatomy, our running joke. She had bookmarked the pancreas chapter with a yellow sticky note that read, "Rude was a card." Her handwriting, shaky but deliberate. "Finish what you started, Irene. Become the doctor I know you are. Don't you dare let anyone, especially your own blood, tell you who you are." She had written it weeks before she died. She knew she wouldn't be there when I needed the push. I closed the laptop, opened it again, filled out the re-enrollment form. 2 options. Break or climb. I chose to climb. Not for my parents, not for revenge, but for Sarah, and for the version of myself she believed in. I went back in January. No family support, no safety net. I took out additional student loans, accepted a part-time research assistant role, and ate hospital cafeteria leftovers more times than I can admit. Medical school doesn't pause for personal loss. Anatomy exams don't wait for family estrangement. 12-hour clinical rotations don't shorten because you cried in a supply closet at 2 a.m. So I stopped crying and started working. I worked like my life depended on it. Because in a way, it did. I graduated on time. No one from Hartford came. I matched into a surgical residency at Mercy Rest Medical Center back on the East Coast, a level 1 trauma center, one of the busiest in Connecticut. That's where I met Dr. Margaret Thornton, Maggie, 58 years old, chief of surgery emeritus, built like a steel cable wrapped in a lab coat. She became the mentor I desperately needed and the mother figure I had lost. During my 3rd year of residency, I met Nathan Caldwell. He was a civil rights attorney, doing pro bono work at a community clinic near the hospital. He had calm eyes, a dry sense of humor, and he was the first person I told the entire story to who didn't flinch, didn't pity me, and didn't try to fix it. He simply listened. Then he said, "You deserve better." 4 words. That was enough. We got married on a Saturday afternoon in Maggie's backyard. 30 guests attended. Nathan's father walked me down the aisle. I sent an invitation to Hartford. It came back the same way my letter had, unopened. Aunt Ruth was there, though. She cried enough for 2 parents. After the ceremony, Maggie handed me a sealed envelope. "A nomination," she said. "Don't open it yet. You're not ready." I slipped it into my desk drawer without asking any questions. 5 years passed. I became someone they wouldn't recognize. Now, I need to pause here for a moment. If you've ever been in a situation where your family refused to hear your side, or the truth didn't matter because someone else's lie was louder, drop a fire in the comments. And if you think my parents are going to regret this, type karma. Let's keep going, because what happened next? Even I didn't see it coming. January. Present day. I'm 32 years old. I'm the chief of trauma surgery at Mercy Rest Medical Center. I have a house in the suburbs with a porch that catches beautiful morning light, a husband who makes me laugh every day, and a golden retriever named Hippocrates, Hippo for short, who has never judged me for eating cereal at midnight. It's a good life, a real life, one I built brick by brick with my own hands. But there's a certain kind of ache that never completely disappears. It lives in the hollow space between your ribs, right where a family is supposed to be. I don't wake up crying anymore. I don't check my phone hoping to see a Hartford area code. But every Thanksgiving, there's a brief moment when I'm setting the table, counting the plates, and I feel their absence like a phantom limb. Aunt Ruth still calls every Sunday. She's my only thread back to that world. I never ask about them, but I always listen when she offers information. Mom and Dad are healthy. Monica got divorced 2 years ago. She sells medical devices now. The irony isn't lost on me. Last week, Ruth called, and there was something different in her voice. Something cautious. "Irene, there's something I need to tell you about Monica. Something concerning." Before she could finish, my hospital pager went off. Trauma activation. I told Ruth I'd call her back. I never got the chance. Because what Ruth was trying to warn me about was already on its way, speeding down I-91 at 60 miles per hour in a sedan that was about to run a red light. And within the hour, The very thing Ruth was trying to tell me would be lying on my operating table, bleeding out, with my parents in the waiting room, and my name on the chart. I just didn't know it yet. Let me back up, because what Monica did wasn't a single lie. It was a campaign. Over the years, Ruth had been giving me pieces of the story, reluctantly, carefully, as if she were defusing a bomb, one wire at a time. And the picture she revealed was worse than I'd imagined. For 5 years, Monica maintained the narrative. At every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every family gathering, she played the role of the grieving older sister. "We don't really talk about Irene," she'd tell relatives. "It's too painful for Mom and Dad." She would shake her head, lower her voice, and let the silence do the rest. But she didn't stop there. She added details. She told our grandmother I was homeless. She told Uncle Pete's wife she'd heard through mutual friends that I was in and out of rehab. She told our mother on Christmas Eve 2 years earlier that she had tried reaching out to me and I had refused, that I was the one who cut them off. She reversed the entire story. "She said at Thanksgiving," Ruth told me once, her voice tight with anger, "I've begged Irene to come home. She won't even answer my calls. I think she hates us." Meanwhile, I was 3 floors deep in an operating room, saving a teenager's life. The genius of it, and I use that word with disgust, was that Monica didn't need my parents to forget me. She needed them to believe that I had abandoned them. That way, their grief became evidence, their silence became justified, and she remained exactly what she had always been, the loyal daughter, the only one who stayed. She wasn't protecting them, she was protecting her position. And there was one more thing Ruth told me, something I didn't that made the entire picture even darker, but I'll get to that. Nathan told me something over coffee one morning 6 months ago. He'd been holding on to it for 2 years. "There's something I didn't tell you," he said, setting his mug down carefully, the way he always does when he's about to deliver bad news in his lawyer voice. 2 years ago, I got a call from HR at your old hospital. Someone using a fake name contacted them, asking about the employment status of Irene Ulett. They wanted to know whether you'd ever been disciplined, whether your credentials were legitimate. I stared at him. "Who?" I had a colleague trace the inquiry. The IP address came back to Hartford. The kitchen became very quiet. Hippo's tail thumped against the floor. The coffee maker hissed. "She was trying to find something," I said. "Anything." Nathan nodded. "Anything she could use to keep the story alive. Anything that could prove you were a fraud." "She didn't find anything." "No," he said. "Because there was nothing to find." I wrapped my hands tightly around my mug, feeling the heat through the ceramic. "She didn't just lie about me once, Nathan. She's been hunting me." He reached across the table and placed his hand over mine. "That's not sibling rivalry, Irene. That's something else entirely." He was right. Monica hadn't told a lie and moved on. She had built an entire architecture of deception, load-bearing walls, reinforced beams, and spent 5 years making sure none of it collapsed. Every holiday story, every whispered rumor, every fake inquiry, another brick. I could have done something then, called a lawyer, confronted my parents, exposed everything, but I didn't. Because life was about to do it for me in the most brutal, public, and ironic way imaginable. And it began with a pager at 3 o'clock in the morning. Thursday night, January, 3:07 a.m. The pager pulled me from a deep sleep. Nathan shifted beside me and murmured something. Hippo lifted his head from the foot of the bed. The screen glowed in the darkness. Level 1 trauma. MVC, single female, 35. Blunt abdominal trauma. Hemodynamically unstable. ETA, 8 minutes. I was dressed in 4 minutes. Driving in 6. The roads were empty and wet, wrapped in that particular shade of black that only January in Connecticut seems to produce. As I drove, I ran through the case in my head the way I always do. Mechanism of injury. Probably organ involvement. Surgical options. Motor vehicle collision. Blunt abdominal trauma. Unstable vitals. Likely splenic rupture. Possible liver laceration. I'd done this surgery 100 times. I badged into the ambulance bay and headed straight for the trauma bay. My team was already assembling. 2 residents, a trauma nurse, anesthesia on standby. I picked up the incoming patient chart from the charge nurse's station and swiped open the iPad. Patient, Monica Dulett. DOB, March 14, 1990. Emergency contact, Gerald Ulett, father. I stopped walking. The hallway noise, the beeping, the intercom, the squeak of shoes on linoleum, all pulled back like a tide. For 2 seconds, maybe 3, I wasn't a surgeon. I was a 26-year-old sitting on a hospital floor in Portland. The phone still warm in my hand, listening to a dial tone. Dr. Ulett? My charge nurse Linda appeared at my shoulder. You okay? I looked up, blinked, and set the iPad down. I'm fine. Prep Bay 2, and page Dr. Patel. I want him on standby. The ambulance siren wailed in the distance, getting closer. And behind that ambulance, I knew, even before I saw them, were 2 people I hadn't faced in 5 years. The doors burst open, and the stretcher came fast. Monica was strapped down, unconscious, oxygen mask fogging with shallow breaths, blood staining her shirt, one hand hanging limp off the rail. The paramedics rattled off numbers, blood pressure dropping, heart rate rising, 2 large-bore IVs running wide. Behind them, running in, came my parents. My mother looked like she'd aged a decade, thinner hair, drawn face. She wore a bathrobe, slippers on the wrong feet. My father was in flannel, and jeans thrown on in panic, his face the color of old paper. That's my daughter, he shouted past the triage nurse. Where are they taking her? I need to talk to the doctor in charge. The nurse, a woman named Carla, I'd worked with for 3 years, raised both hands. Sir, family needs to wait in the surgical waiting area. The trauma team is already here. The chief is handling this personally. The chief? My father grabbed Carla's arm. Get me the chief now. Carla glanced through the glass partition toward the trauma bay. She looked at me, gowned, gloved, badge hanging from my scrub top. She read the name. Her eyes widened for just a fraction of a second. I gave a small shake of my head. Not now. Carla composed herself. Sir, the chief is prepping for surgery. You'll be updated as soon as possible. Please, this way to the waiting room. My parents were led down the hall. My mother whispered prayers, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. My father kept turning back, scanning every window they passed. She's all we have, he said, to no one in particular. Please, she's all we have. I heard it through the glass partition. Every word, she's all we have. As if I had never existed. I stepped into the scrub room alone. 30 seconds. That's all I allowed myself. I turned on the faucet and let the water run hot over my hands. I looked at myself in the stainless steel mirror above the sink. Distorted. Warped. The way everything felt. Scrub cap on. Badge visible. The face of a woman who had been surgically removed from her own family tree, now being asked to surgically save the woman who held the saw. Part of me wanted to walk out, call Patel. Let someone else carry this. Let my parents owe their daughter's life to a stranger, not to me. Cleaner, simpler. But there was a woman on that table with a ruptured spleen, and what looked like a grade 3 liver laceration. She was bleeding faster than we could replace it. She would die in the next 30 to 40 minutes if the best surgeon in the building didn't operate. And the best surgeon in the building was me. I paged Patel directly. I have a conflict of interest. The patient is a family member. I'm disclosing it now and documenting in the chart. If at any point my judgment is compromised, you take over. No questions asked. Patel's voice stayed steady. Understood, Chief. I told Linda to document the disclosure in the nursing record. Everything by the book. Everything on paper. Then I pulled on fresh gloves, pushed through the OR doors, and looked down at the table. My sister's face, still bruised. The oxygen mask fogging, clearing, fogging again. She looked smaller than I remembered. Thinner. Worry lines etched around her eyes, that hadn't been there 5 years ago. For 3 seconds, she wasn't the woman who destroyed my life. She was a body on my table, and that was exactly how I needed her to be. Let's go. Scalpel. 3 hours and 40 minutes. That's how long it took to repair what the steering column and the red light had destroyed. Ruptured spleen. We removed it. Grade 3 liver laceration. We repaired it with precision sutures, layer by painstaking layer. Internal bleeding from 2 mesenteric vessels. Clamped, cauterized, controlled. I didn't speak unless I had to. Suction, clamp, lap pad, retract. My hands moved exactly as they were trained to. Steady, deliberate, fast when speed mattered. Slow when precision mattered more. The residents watched. They always watched during my cases. I could feel their attention sharpen when the liver repair got difficult. I didn't falter. I couldn't. At 6:48 a.m., I placed the final closing stitch. Monica's vitals stabilized. Blood pressure normalized. Output clear. She was alive. Dr. Patel, who had been standing silently in the corner the entire time, pulled his mask down. Irene, he said quietly. That was flawless. You want me to talk to the family? I peeled off my gloves, dropped them in the bin, and washed my hands. Automatic, methodical, the same way I had done it 10,000 times before. No, I said. This one's mine. I caught my reflection again in the scrub room mirror. Same face, same badge, but something had shifted. For 5 years, I had been the daughter who disappeared. Now I was the surgeon who had pulled her sister back from the edge of death. And those two truths were about to collide in a waiting room 40 feet away, in front of my entire night shift team. I straightened my scrub top, checked my badge, took one breath, and walked toward the waiting room. The hallway had never felt so long. The waiting room carried that fluorescent hush hospitals get at 7 a.m. 2 other families were scattered in distant corners. A television murmured weather reports to no one. In the center row, sitting rigid, sleepless, and terrified, were my parents. I pushed through the double doors still in surgical scrubs, mask pulled down around my neck, scrub cap off now, hair pulled back. My badge hung at chest level, printed in clean block letters readable from 6 feet away. Dr. Irene Ouellette, MD, Fax, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Dad stood first. He always stood first. It was reflex. The need to take control. Doctor, how is she? Is Monica? He stopped. His eyes dropped to my badge, then lifted to my face, then dropped again. I watched recognition move through him like something physical. Tremor starting in his hands, climbing into his jaw. Mom looked up half a second later. Her lips parted. No sound came out. Her right hand shot to Dad's forearm and clamped down, fingers digging into his flannel sleeve. The force I would later learn left 4 bruises shaped like fingertips. 5 seconds of silence. 5 seconds that held 5 years. I spoke first. Calm, clinical. The same voice I use with every family in this room. Mr. and Mrs. Ouellette. I'm Dr. Ouellette, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Your daughter Monica sustained a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration in the Waywend accident. Surgery was successful. She is stable and currently in the ICU. You will be able to see her in approximately 1 hour. Mr. and Mrs. Not Mom and Dad. I watched it land. I watched it land. Behind me, through the glass partition, Linda and 2 nurses were watching. They knew by the look on their faces. They had already understood. My mother moved first. She stepped toward me, arms lifting, a sob already breaking through her chest. Irene, oh my God, Irene. I stepped back, half a step, polite, unmistakable. She froze. Her hands hung in the air between us, then slowly, painfully, dropped to her sides. Dad's voice came out like gravel dragged over concrete. You're a doctor. I am. You're the chief. I am. But Monica said, what exactly? He closed his mouth, opened it, closed it again. I could see the machinery of his mind trying to rebuild 5 years of certainty collapsing in real time. Mom was crying now, not quietly. We thought you dropped out. We thought she told us you were. She told you I dropped out, I said. That I had a boyfriend with a drug problem. That I was homeless. That I refused to contact you. I kept my voice level. No shaking. No tears. I had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. In the shower, in the car, in the dark before sleep. I never expected it to happen in surgical scrubs under fluorescent lights. None of it was true. Not a single word. Through the glass behind me, I saw Carla press a hand to her mouth. A resident, Dr. Kimura, 2nd year, looked away, jaw tight. Linda set down her clipboard and stared. Dad tried to regain control. Old instinct. This isn't the time or place, Irene. Your sister is in the ICU. I know. I just spent 3 hours and 40 minutes making sure she survives. So yes, Dad, I'm aware of where she is. He had nothing. For the first time in my life, my father, a man who had never been without a decree, had nothing. The silence did what I never could. 5 years of blocked calls, returned letters, ignored emails. None of it had made a dent. But standing here alive, accomplished, and wearing the proof on my chest, that was louder than anything I could have written. Mom reached for the back of a chair to steady herself. The letters? She whispered. You said you sent letters. 2 emails with my leave of absence paperwork attached. 1 handwritten letter mailed priority. You sent it back unopened. I recognized your handwriting on the envelope. She pressed her fist against her mouth. Dad stared at the floor. I called 14 times in 5 days. I asked Aunt Ruth to speak to you. You told her to stay out of it. I wasn't accusing. I was reciting facts. And facts don't need volume. Then Linda appeared in the doorway. She didn't know the full story, not yet, but she had hospital business. Dr. Ulett, I'm sorry to interrupt. The board chair saw the overnight trauma log. He asked me to pass along that the Physician of the Year selection committee sends their congratulations on tonight's surgical outcome. Linda said it like any routine update. She had no idea she had just detonated a second bomb. Mom looked at me, eyes swollen, mascara gone, bathrobe still on. Physician of the Year? It's an internal recognition. It's nothing. I turned to Linda. Thank you. I need to check post-operative vitals. Excuse me. I walked toward the ICU corridor. Steps measured, spine straight. I didn't look back, but I heard my mother's voice behind me, small and broken. Jerry, what have we done? And I heard something I had never heard before. My father saying nothing, because silence, for the first time, was the only honest thing he had left. 4 hours later, ICU room 6. Monitors beeping in steady rhythm, morning light angled through the blinds. I walked in for the standard post-operative assessment. Vitals, drainage output, wound check, routine. Except nothing about this was routine. Monica's eyes were open, glacier, unfocused from anesthesia, but open. She blinked at the ceiling, then at the IV pole. Then her gaze shifted sideways toward me. She squinted. Read my badge. Read it again. Color drained from her face in a way I've only seen in patients who'd reckon you've just been given a bad prognosis. Irene. Her voice was sandpaper. Good morning, Monica. I'm your attending surgeon. You sustained a ruptured spleen and a grade 3 liver laceration from the accident. Surgery went well. You're going to make a full recovery. You're a doctor. Not a question. Reckoning. I'm the chief of this department. Have been for 2 years. I watched it unfold across her face. The same sequence Dad had gone through, only slower. Filtered through a morphine drip, and what I suspect was dawning terror. Confusion first. Then disbelief. Then fear. And then there it was. The expression I'd seen my whole life. That quick flicker behind the eyes. Calculation. Even now, lying in a hospital bed with my sutures holding her liver together, Monica was trying to figure out how to spin it. Irene, listen. I can explain. You don't need to explain anything to me. I nodded toward the glass door, where 2 figures stood in the hallway watching. Faces wrecked. Eyes red. You need to explain it to them. I updated her chart, checked the drain, and left without another word. I didn't stay to hear what happened next, but the entire ICU floor did. Monica's room wasn't soundproof. Neither was the truth. Okay, I have to stop here for a second. What do you think Monica told my parents when they walked into that ICU room? Option A. She finally tells the truth. Option B. She doubles down on the lie. Option C. She plays the victim again. Drop your answer in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. Because the next part is where everything comes crashing down. I learned what happened from Linda, who heard it from the ICU nurse, who heard it through the glass. If you guessed option C, congratulations. You know my sister. The moment my parents walked in, Monica started crying. Big, heaving sobs that pulled at her stitches and made the heart monitor spike. Mom, Dad, you have to believe me. I never meant for it to go this far. I was scared for her. Dad stood at the foot of the bed, his voice barely controlled. Monica, Irene is a surgeon. She's the chief of trauma surgery at this hospital. I didn't know that, she said. She said she sent letters, emails. She called 14 times. She asked Ruth to intervene. Mom's voice was flat, hollow. Is that true? She's exaggerating. You know how she... Ruth tried to tell us. Dad cut in, and this time his voice cracked. Not from grief, but from the structural collapse of everything he'd believed for 5 years. 2 years ago. Ruth called and said Irene was in residency. A surgeon. You told us Ruth was lying, that she was just trying to cause drama. Ruth doesn't know the whole story. What is the full story, Monica? Mom shouted, her voice echoing through the ICU. The nurse at the station outside flinched. 2 rooms down, a visitor looked up from their phone. Monica backed into the corner, IV lines in both arms, my sutures in her abdomen, and did what she always does. She pivoted. From defense to offense. Fine. She's a doctor. Good for her. But she abandoned this family. She never called because we blocked her number, Monica. Dad's hand was on the bed rail, knuckles white. Because you told us to. The heart monitor beeped. The IV dripped. And Monica, for perhaps the first time in her adult life, had no script. Aunt Ruth walked into the ICU at 9:45 that morning. I had called her from the scrub room after surgery, not to use her as a weapon, but because Monica was her niece too, and Ruth deserved to know. But Ruth came prepared. 5 years of silence will do that to a woman with a filing system and a long memory. She didn't sit, didn't hug anyone. She stood in the middle of the room and said, "I've been waiting 5 years to have this conversation, and I'm not waiting one more minute." She pulled out her phone and opened a folder she had labeled, "I learned later. Irene proof." Inside, screenshots of every email I'd sent my parents in those first desperate days. The PDF of my leave of absence from OSU, signed by the dean, stamped with the registrar's seal. My re-enrollment confirmation. A photo of my residency graduation, me in a cap holding my diploma, Aunt Ruth beside me, the only family member in the frame. She held the phone out. Mom took it with trembling hands. "And here," Ruth said, swiping to a text thread. "This is from Monica, sent to me 4 years ago." She read it aloud. "Don't tell Mom and Dad about Irene's residency. It'll just confuse them. They're finally at peace." The room went still. Monica stared at the ceiling. Her jaw was tight, but the calculation was gone from her eyes. What replaced it was something I had never seen before. The look of someone who has run out of places to hide. "You told me to keep quiet for the family's sake," Ruth said, looking directly at Monica. "But this family hasn't had peace. It's had a 5-year blackout." Then she turned to my parents. "And you two, you let this happen. Not because you didn't love Irene, but because loving Monica was easier." No one argued. There was nothing left to argue with. Mom sank into the chair beside Monica's bed, but she wasn't looking at Monica anymore. She was scrolling through Ruth's phone, reading my emails one by one. Her lips moved as she read. She stopped on the last one, the one I'd sent the night before my residency graduation. "I know what it says. I've reread it 100 times in my sent folder. Mom, I don't know if you'll read this. I graduated from residency today. I wish you were here. I'm still your daughter. I never stopped being your daughter." Mom doubled over in the chair, not crying. It was beyond that. It was the sound of someone meeting the full weight of a mistake that can never be undone. Dad stood at the window, his back to the room, shoulders shaking. Aunt Ruth told me later it was the first time she had ever seen her older brother cry in 62 years. Not once, not at their mother's funeral, not when his business nearly went under, not ever. He cried now, silently, facing the parking lot, while the monitor beeped behind him. Monica lay in the bed. She had stopped talking. The IV dripped. Her eyes were fixed on a point in the ceiling. There was nothing left to perform. No audience left to believe her. The persona she had worn for 35 years was lying in pieces on the linoleum, and no amount of charm, or tears, or clever reframing was going to put it back together. "You missed her wedding, Jerry." Ruth's voice was quiet now, spent. "Nathan's father walked her down the aisle. Do you understand what that means?" Dad didn't turn from the window, but he spoke. 4 words, low, cracked down the center. "What have we done?" Not a question. He wasn't asking. He was convicting. And knowing the truth, and knowing what to do with it, those are 2 very different things. I came back that afternoon, end of my shift, 22 hours since the pager woke me. But who's counting? My parents were still there. Of course they were. Where else would they go? Back to the house where they had spent 5 years pretending they only had one daughter. Mom stood up the second I walked in. Her face was swollen, eyes nearly shut from crying. "Irene, baby, I'm so sorry. I held up my hand, gentle, but firm. "I hear you, and I believe you're sorry. But sorry is a word. It's a starting place, not a finish line. What I need is time." Dad turned from the window. He looked like he had aged 5 years since morning. "We want to make this right. Then you need to understand something." I kept my voice even. This wasn't anger. This was clarity. The kind that comes after you've burned through every other emotion and what's left is truth. Clean and simple. "I'm not the girl you sent away. I'm not the girl who begged you to listen for 5 days from 3,000 miles away. I'm someone who built a life. A whole life, without you. And if you want to be part of it now, it will be on my terms. Not Monica's. Not yours. Mine." Dad opened his mouth, old reflex. Then closed it and nodded. A small, devastated nod. I looked at Monica on the bed. Her eyes were open, watching me. When you're recovered, I said, you and I are going to have a conversation. A real one. But not today. Today you're my patient. I don't mix the two. I left, spine straight, steps measured. I didn't turn around. I'm not closing the door, but I'm the one who decides when it opens, how wide, and who walks through. 2 weeks later, Monica was discharged. Her incision was healing. The rest of her wasn't. I chose the location. A coffee shop in Middletown, halfway between her apartment and mine. Neutral ground. Nathan came, but sat at a separate table near the window, pretending to read briefs. He wasn't really pretending. Monica walked in looking like someone hollowed out. She had lost weight. Surgery plus not eating will do that. And the confidence she usually wore like cologne was gone. For the first time in my memory, my older sister looked exactly her age. She sat down, wrapped her hands around a cup she didn't drink from, and stared at the table. I didn't preamble. I'm not going to yell at you. I'm not going to list every lie. You know what you did. What I want to know is why. Silence. Long enough that the barista called someone's name, and it echoed off the walls. Then, quietly, because you were going to be everything I wasn't. And I couldn't handle it. I let it sit. That's honest. First honest thing you've said to me in 10 years. I'm sorry, Irene. I know you are. But sorry doesn't give me back the years. Sorry doesn't put Dad at my wedding. Sorry doesn't unsend that box Mom shipped back to me. My high school graduation things returned like I was dead to her. She looked away. Her eyes were wet. Real tears. I know the difference now. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. I also called your medical school twice. I tried to get them to revoke your leave of absence. I told them you'd fabricated the caregiver documents. The coffee shop hummed around us. I stared at her. Your dean wouldn't listen to me. He protected you. He didn't protect me, Monica. He believed the truth. That's not the same thing. I leaned back in my chair, took a breath. This was the part I had mapped out the night before, sitting on the kitchen floor with hippos, some head in my lap, while Nathan reviewed it with me like a closing argument. I'm not cutting you out of my life, I said, but I'm setting conditions. Monica nodded, small, defeated. You will tell the truth, the full truth. To every family member you lied to, every aunt, every uncle, every cousin who spent 5 years thinking I was in rehab, or living on the street. You will correct every single story. I will. And you'll do it in writing. An email to the family group, all 47 people. Ruth will confirm everyone receives it. Another nod. I met with my parents separately the following week. Nathan drove me. We sat at their kitchen table, the same table where Dad had read my acceptance letter years ago. The same table where Monica had smiled with just her mouth. I'm open to rebuilding, I said. But I need you to go to family counseling. Both of you. Not for me, for yourselves. You need to understand why you believed a lie about your own daughter and never once picked up the telephone to check. Dad's jaw tightened. We don't do that in this family. That's exactly why we're here, Dad. Mom put her hand on his arm gently. Jerry, please. He looked at her, looked at me. Something behind his eyes cracked. Not open, not yet, but cracked. Fine. I stood to leave, then turned back. One more thing. Nathan's father walked me down the aisle. That happened. We can't undo it. But if you want to know your future grandchildren, you start now. Not with grand gestures, with consistency. Apologies expire. Boundaries don't. That's the difference between sentiment and structure. 1 month later, the Physician of the Year Gala. 200 people filled the ballroom of the Hartford Marquis Hotel. Surgeons, department heads, hospital administrators, donors, board members. Crystal glasses clinked. Name tags hung from lanyards. A string quartet played something classical that nobody was listening to. I wore a simple black dress. Nathan sat at a front table looking like he had been born in a suit. Maggie Thornton sat beside him, arms crossed, faint smile on her face. The kind she reserves for moments she has been engineering for years. The MC stepped to the podium. This year's Physician of the Year. A surgeon whose clinical excellence, composure under pressure, and commitment to her patients have set a new standard for this institution. Dr. Irene Hewlett, Chief of Trauma Surgery. Applause. Standing ovation from the surgical staff who had seen me work. I walked to the stage, spotlight warm, podium solid under my hands. I kept it short. 5 years ago, I almost quit. Not because I couldn't do the work, but because I lost the people I thought I needed to keep going. What I learned is that the people you need aren't always the ones you're born to. Sometimes they're the ones who choose you. I looked at Maggie, at Nathan, at my team in the third row. Then I looked to the back of the ballroom. Last row. 2 seats Ruth had quietly arranged. My parents. Mom in a navy dress she had probably bought that week. Dad in a tie he clearly hated. Both sitting with hands in their laps, looking up at the stage with expressions I can only describe as grief and pride fighting war in the same face. And sometimes, I said, the ones you're born to find their way back late. But here, Mom covered her mouth. Dad stood. Applause filled the rest. After the gala, Dad found Nathan near the coat check. He stood in front of my husband for a long moment. I owe you an apology. I should have been the one. Nathan, gracious to his core, extended his hand. With all due respect, sir, you should have been a lot of things. But we're here now. They shook hands. Dad's eyes were red. He didn't let go right away. Monica sent the email on a Wednesday night. Ruth confirmed delivery to all 47 addresses. I didn't read it until the next morning. Nathan brought me coffee and set the laptop on the kitchen table without a word. He knows when to give me space. It was 3 paragraphs. No excuses. No flowery language. Just facts laid bare. She had lied about my leaving medical school. She had fabricated evidence. She had maintained the deception for 5 years. She had deliberately prevented our parents from learning the truth. She ended with, Irene never abandoned this family. I made sure they believed she did. That is entirely on me. The responses came in waves. Uncle Pete's wife called Ruth in tears. She had repeated Monica's rehab story at a book club 2 years earlier. Cousin David in Vermont sent Monica a one-line reply. I don't know who you are anymore. Our grandmother, Nana June, 89, the matriarch who had stopped asking about me at Thanksgiving, because Monica told her it was too painful, called me directly. I'm 89 years old, she said, voice thin paper but furious, and I have never been lied to so thoroughly by my own blood. Irene, forgive an old woman for not seeing it. There's nothing to forgive, Nana. You were lied to. We all were. Nobody organized a boycott of Monica. Nobody sent group texts declaring her dead to them. The trust she had stockpiled, the currency she had been spending for 35 years, was gone. You could feel it in the silence after her email, in the replies that didn't come, in the invitations that quietly stopped arriving. No one punished Monica. They just stopped believing her. And for someone who had built her entire identity on being believed, that was punishment enough. My parents started counseling in February. A therapist in West Hartford named Dr. Shrina. Calm, direct, the kind of woman who doesn't let you dodge a question. Mom took to it immediately. She had been carrying the weight of her passivity, like a stone in her coat pocket. The first time Dr. Shrina named it, enabling through silence, Mom broke down in the office, and didn't stop crying for 40 minutes. That's what Ruth told me. I wasn't there. It wasn't my session to witness. Dad struggled. He went. He sat in the chair. He answered questions in as few words as possible. Dr. Rena told him, Ruth relayed, that his need to be right, his refusal to revisit a decision once made, had been the load-bearing wall of this entire disaster. Monica provided the lie, but Dad's pride cemented it in place. He didn't argue with her. That might have been the first sign of change. 3 weeks into counseling, Mom mailed me a letter, handwritten. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. I failed you, she wrote. Not just when I believed Monica, but every time I chose peace over fairness. Every time I let your father's temper decide what was true. Every time I saw you standing in the doorway, quiet and waiting, and told myself you were fine, because it was easier than admitting I wasn't brave enough to fight for you. I read it at the kitchen table. Eppo was asleep at my feet. Nathan was in the next room pretending not to listen. I didn't cry, but I held that letter for a long time. Then I opened the drawer where I keep things that matter, Sarah's card, my returned letters, the wedding invitation that came back unopened, and placed it inside. Same drawer, different side. Progress isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just rearranging what you carry. Monica started therapy too, her own, separate from family sessions. I know, because Ruth told me, and because Monica mentioned it briefly, awkwardly, the second time we met for coffee. We've had 3 meetings now. Each one short, each one stiff, each one slightly more honest than the last. The first time she stared at her hands and said nothing useful. The second time she told me about therapy. The third time she said something that actually landed, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I deserve it. But I want you to know I'm trying not to be that person anymore. I took a sip of my coffee, set it down, then said, show me. Words are cheap in this family. They always have been. Show me with time. She nodded. Didn't push. Didn't perform. That was new. Do I believe her? Honestly, I don't know. I've spent a lifetime reading Monica's performances, and I'm still not sure where her acting ends and her actual self begins. Maybe she isn't sure either. Maybe that's what therapy is for. I believe in the possibility of change. That's all I can offer right now. She carries my surgical scar on her body. 7 inches in the left upper abdomen, fading from red to white over the coming year. Every time she gets dressed, every time she catches her reflection, she'll see the mark left by the sister she tried to erase. The sister who, when it mattered most, held a scalpel with steady hands and chose the oath over the anger. I carry her damage in my memory. 5 years of silence lodged somewhere between my ribs. Or even, in the strangest, most painful way 2 sisters can be even. Maybe, with enough time, enough real, unglamorous, consistent time, we'll find our way to something that isn't even, something better, something new. I'm sitting in my office at Mercy Crest. It's late. The hallway outside is quiet, that particular stillness hospitals have after the last. Visitors leave and before the night shift energy begins. My nameplate is on the door. My diplomas are on the wall. Not because I need to see them, but because the residents do. On my desk, a framed wedding photo. Nathan, Maggie, Aunt Ruth, 30 guests, a backyard in October light. No parents in the frame. But on the bookshelf next to it is a new photo, taken 3 weeks ago. Mom and Dad standing on my front porch, coats on, looking slightly lost. Dad's hands in his pockets. Mom mid-smile, trying too hard, but trying. It's awkward. It's imperfect. It's real. If you're watching this, and you see yourself in my story, whether you grand the one who was silenced or the one who did the silencing, I want to tell you something. The truth doesn't expire. It doesn't matter whether it takes 5 days or 5 years. The truth has a patient way of arriving exactly when it's needed most. You can't rush it, but you can't outrun it either. I didn't get revenge on my sister. I didn't need revenge. I became someone who didn't need it. And that turned out to be the most devastating response of all. Not a scheme, not a plan, just a life lived fully on my own terms. And if you're waiting for your family to see you, really see you, stop waiting. See yourself first. Build the life you deserve with the people who show up. And when the others finally turn around, let them find a door that you control. You decide when it opens. You decide how wide. You decide who walks through. That's not revenge. That's architecture. Sunday morning, first week of February. Light snow falling outside the kitchen window, the kind that doesn't stick, but makes everything look gently forgiven. I'm making French toast. Nathan is grinding coffee beans, singing off-key to something on the radio. Ipo is stationed under the table, hopeful for crumbs. The doorbell rings. I wipe my hands on a towel and open the front door. Mom and Dad are standing on the porch in winter coats. Dad is holding a bottle of orange juice like he's not sure what to do with his hands. Mom has a tin of homemade cookies. Her shortbread. The ones she used to make for every school event of Monica's, and none of mine. Hi, Mom says, nervous, hopeful. Come in, I say. Coffee's almost ready. Dad steps inside, and looks around the kitchen like he's cataloging everything. The house he'd never been in. The life he almost never knew existed. He clears his throat. Can I help with anything? I look at him. My father, 62 years old, standing in my kitchen for the first time, asking permission to be useful. You can set the table, Dad. He nods, goes to the cabinet I point to, takes out plates, counts them, looks at me. 4. He sets them down one by one, carefully, like they might break if he isn't gentle. Nathan hands him coffee. Mom hugs me at the stove. Not a dramatic movie hug, just a quiet one. Arms around me, forehead against my shoulder. No words. Just holding on. Eppo thumps his tail. Snow falls outside. The French toast sizzles. It's not perfect. It's not the childhood I deserved or the reconciliation movies promise. But it's real. And real is more than I've had for a very long time. My name is Dr. Irene Hewlett. I'm 32 years old, and I am finally, slowly, carefully letting myself be someone's daughter again. 4 plates. It's a start. If this story resonated with you, If it made you think about your own family, your own boundaries, or someone you've lost and found, leave a comment. Tell me, what would you have done? Would you have opened that door? And if you want more stories like this, check the description for one I think you'll love just as much. Thank you for being here. I'll see you next time.